Thank you for joining us here on The Key Points. You can share your thoughts to our WhatsApp line is 055-369-8789. You can also send your tweets to Beho Bampo, also to TV3_Ghana and 3FM 92.7. So the E-Levy has been passed against much opposition. It's an unpopular law for now, but the minority leader and his side in Parliament decided to walk out just in time to avoid being in the House upon the passage of the E-Levy. Let's see that.
These taxes will negate the gains we have made as a country on our digital evolution and to mainstream ICT in all aspects of our national life. Mr. Speaker, this tax, apart from the fact that it's regressive, is also punitive. And Mr. Speaker, this tax only reminds me of the window tax of 1696 of the United Kingdom. It is a tax, Mr. Speaker, on savings, it's a tax on capital, and it's a tax on withdrawals. Mr. Speaker, this provision can only be a provision for chop-chop. What is your justification? What is your justification? And what will be your justification for wanting to spend 241 million to collect Momo? Which Momo? In any case, Mr. Speaker, the telcos are already collecting Momo. You don't need a new platform. You don't need a new platform. And you don't need any service provider to collect this tax. Mr. Speaker, because we do not support the E-Levy, the minority group led by me after listening to the majority leader will not be associated with any further proceedings on the E-Levy. We will mark that. We want to be recorded that when E-Levy was brought to the Parliament, we stood together, opposed to it, we asked for its rejection, and we said we would not support it, Mr. Speaker.
Do we
so on that note,
to stop E-Levy?
On that note, Mr. Speaker, we don't support E-Levy. We will not support E-Levy. Count us out of it. They can proceed with whatever business they want to do. I thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Please wait me. Put the question. What of the line? Put the question. Put the question. Put the question. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, put the question. My colleagues are in the chamber. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues are in the chamber. I invite you to put the question now. Put the question now. They're in the chamber. Put the question now. They're in the chamber. Put the question now. Mr. Speaker, I'm inviting you. Put the question now. They're in the chamber.
So you could hear the Honorable Seche Mensah-Bonsu, the majority leader, insisting on taking the question, asking the Speaker to pose the question before the minority members exited. Well, that didn't happen. Well, since then, the E-Levy was passed, and President Akufo-Addo has since assented to that bill. And he took some time during his State of the Nation address to thank the House for passing the bill.
Despite the protracted and sometimes acrimonious nature of proceedings, I'm happy that the House has
Apologies for that. Let's bring you President Akufo-Addo on Wednesday commenting on the E-Levy bill.
Acrimonious nature of proceedings. I'm happy that the House has finally found it possible to pass the E-Levy bill. I believe strongly the levy is going to make a significant contribution to revenue mobilization and the management of the national economy. And And I want to thank members of the House for making this possible.
So I guess now the main task is setting up the appropriate mechanisms to collect the levy. The Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, has been addressing that in Parliament last week.
We had some meetings of the Controller General and DRA, and they have indicated to us that right at the beginning of May, they should be able to get the systems all together.
All right, so that's been the sum total of what's been happening this week when it comes to the E-Levy. Let's welcome our guests in studio. To my left, the Honorable Kwaku Ricketts-Hagan. You're welcome once again. And a fresh face to our panel. We're very happy to have you, former MP for Suhum, the Honorable Opariansa. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Very well, thanks.
Great. So I'll start off with you just by asking about football. Happy the Black Stars made it to the World Cup. What do you make of our lot, Group H?
Well, let me start by congratulating the Black Stars for a wonderful job done. Indeed, judging from what happened at the AFCON, most of us had written ourselves off having the capacity and the ability to even make it anywhere near Qatar. But the Friday's game in Ghana started giving us hope. And I believe with our support and prayers, we were able to pull through. I remember being at the stadium in 2010 when Suarez did what he did.
Oh, so you were in at the World Cup match?
Yeah, and I couldn't be happier when we found ourselves in the group stages with Uruguay to see what best we can do in retribution. And I hope that our boys do remember that when the time comes to play them.
It's a tough group, so I think now the target is just beat Uruguay. If you don't do anything else, we are fine.
We are fine.
Honorable Ricketts-Hagan, are you a football fan?
Yes, I am, actually.
Okay, so you must be glad that the Black Stars have made it after that Jollof Derby, both in Kumasi and Abuja.
Yeah. First of all, good morning to you. Good morning to my brother. I haven't seen for a long time. And to your viewers. I think I share the same, view that I wasn't actually sure whether we were going to make it. And again, from what happened at the AFCON, games. But I'm sure we're all delighted that we were able to. I mean, to do it in Nigeria, I think was a big ask. And the guys did very well. And I hope that we will be able to go to Qatar and sort of be able to do something. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks that anything is possible, but I don't think we're going to go and get a World Cup. But to be able to show that, Ghana Black Star is still a side that people need to reckon with.
Any admonition for the GFA, the sports administrators, the team, because much as many are also happy about the qualification, many also have been issuing warnings, if you follow social media, about how we approach this campaign money-wise, knowing that we are in a country suffering economic challenges.
I think from now until November, when the games actually start, is an opportunity for us to address some of the concerns that or difficulties that we have within the GFA and all that. I mean, I think historically we've been having, problems that somehow the politics in the football sometimes is more than the politics in Parliament. So, but I hope that this gives us an opportunity. I mean, you want to be having problems from a very good, standpoint. That's where we are at the moment, not when we have crisis. So this is an opportunity to sort a few things out. And good luck to the Black Stars. I'm sure that, this is the time that I believe that people like Asamoah wish that they are playing. To play against a Uruguay again and be able to, resolve that painful time in South Africa.
That we couldn't get to the quarter final. Honorable Opariansa, I mean, some will say that we really needed some good news. Things have been bad in the country, difficult. We needed some good news, and this qualification is good news. What would be your admonition to them, knowing what historically, as Honorable Ricketts Hagan has referred to, is the perception about what these tournaments are used for, whether it's about people getting to the tournament through visa opportunities that they should not have, monies expended the ways maybe should not, players feeling that they are being used by others to make money. What's your admonition as they move forward?
Well, I believe at the AFCON, one of the things that emerged were all these talk about voodoo and juju men and the rest. And it was all over social media. I would urge that we try to conduct ourselves in a way that we would bring not only glory to the country, but also respect. I mean, the stories that I read during the AFCON about why even potentially some players decided not to honor the invitation precisely because of that did not go very well for us. So whatever the managers and the advisors and the FA would do to ensure that our appearance at the World Cup in Qatar would not be embroiled in this same kind of situation, I think is very, very important. As for the attitude with which they would approach the tournament and the games that they will find themselves in, that would go a long way to determine how they will perform. We've had jokes in the past where you will hear of a big name from, say, Brazil or Argentina, and then you see a cartoon where a Ghanaian player is standing on the pitch in awe of the fact that
they're starstruck when they see them on the pitch.
Exactly, so when they have the right attitude, I'm sure that they will surprise all of us beyond what we currently probably expect of them. So
we wish
they
them
should
luck.
go in with the right attitude.
Yes, we really wish them luck. So now let's come back from the good news to E-Levy. For some of us, it's not exactly good news.
E-Levy is good news.
It is? I'll start with you on that, because you've been out of Parliament for this session. You were one of those MPs I know who was front and center while you were in the House. What's been your impression of Parliament, and all the shenanigans that have gone down?
I unfortunately, I haven't been too happy with the happenings in Parliament. The Parliament of Ghana since 1993, the beginning of the Fourth Republic, has had a tag on it which seems to suggest that it is a rubber stamp parliament. That parliament, I refer to the first one, was predominantly NDC and its related smaller parties, EGAL party and the rest, because MPP boycotted the 1992 general parliamentary elections. Beyond then, you would notice that every president has had a majority in the House and has also been lucky to have a speaker elected who leans towards the president's political party. And so it has kept on deepening the thinking that anytime there is some issue which comes up or comes off as being partisan, and then the House adopts it and passes it, then it is rubber stamping the will of the executive. So when the 8th Parliament turned out the way it did, with parity of the MPP and the NDC, and then went further to elect a known opposition NDC member who had just exited Parliament as the Speaker, I thought it was an opportunity for Parliament to purge itself of that kind of tag. But here we are, where things are beginning to look like the Parliament wants to turn itself now into a rubber stamp for the opposition. I say so because if you look at the E-Levy, which I'm sure we'll come in to talk about in substance, but I use it as an example, where earlier or so in the last quarter of 2021, the Speaker had signaled that it is possible for him to exit the chair in certain instances to create a tie. And then he goes on later in the year during the budget session to do just that. Then when it comes to E-Levy, the budget itself contained the proposals from government about E-Levy. Budget was passed. The Appropriations Act, which had been passed by Parliament, also contained revenues from the E-Levy. And the House passed it, essentially telling government that we have given you the authority to spend the money that you collect from E-Levy, and then do a full 180 degrees turnabout to say we won't approve the E-Levy for you, whose inflow we've already authorized you to utilize. So it gives a little bit of concern, because whilst all this was happening, the opposition party outside of Parliament had been talking about not supporting E-Levy. So it would seem to imply then that the opposition group in Parliament acted simply to yield to the will of its larger party outside of the House. Then it begins to look like the Parliament now wants to act to please the opposition, rather than what we have seen in the past, where it has been accused of acting to please the executive.
Okay, so that's your reference to it, making it look like it's a rubber stamp for the opposition. But do you disagree with the generally held view, and there's research that points to this, that generally majority of Ghanaians were opposed to the E-Levy?
I am sure that based on what leaders talk about during debate, the population can be misinformed. Interestingly, I was a little busy doing my own internal politicking in the party and did not have occasion to witness firsthand the final debate of the E-Levy and what occasioned the walkout. But I realized that even at the last minute, when the minority leader was talking about exiting, he was still talking about things which had already been cured in the bill. I have seen the law as passed. He was making reference to spending over 200 million cedis to collect the E-Levy. I'm sure he was talking then about revenue assurance system, much like what Kelny GVG offers in respect of CST and the international traffic inflow, the 6 cents that goes to government. But clearly the E-Levy Act that has been passed bars GRA from doing precisely that. So if he had even taken a moment to look at it, I'm sure he would have found that it is no longer there.
Okay,
so you will
but
see
you've
that,
not addressed the issue.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That so
about the general feeling
so
of
that is what
opposition.
I'm saying. So
not the minority's opposition.
No, so although this is not there, public opinion could be shaped by the things the minority leader said on the floor of Parliament, whilst the bill does not stand the way he saw it. So it is important to put into perspective what the general population is thinking in terms of E-Levy and what is actually contained in there vis-a-vis what the opposition or other people may be saying about it. In any case, the responsibility of Parliament is to shape government proposals to the will of the people, because parliamentarians represent the interests of the people. So if the thinking has been that we don't want some aspects of the E-Levy, we want to see a rate change, we want to see a different application, say, of who the law will apply to, then it's important to sit there and then affect the necessary amendments in the bill to reshape it to what the people will be happy about. Otherwise, if you wholesale sell your criticisms about the bill to the population, clearly, if you conduct any research, that will reflect within the population. But I beg to differ that some of the things that has been put out there to the public is not as is in the E-Levy.
Okay. Let me come to Honorable Hagan. So you are not happy with the law, I believe. Fair to say.
Yes.
Okay. But you walked out of the proceedings and did not, whether vote for or against it or approve it in whatever way, shape or form. Do you get a sense from the general public that there was an expectation that Ghanaians wanted to see you actually clearly either vote yes or no? They didn't want the minority, whether they even supported your position or not, to walk out on those proceedings, because for them, it's not on the record that you actually voted against it. Do you get a sense that that's how many Ghanaians feel, and hence the anger towards the minority?
Yes, I have obviously read, from various social media and the news that we've all been listening to, that seems to be the general, consensus out there with the Ghanaian people. When you say people are not happy out there, we are talking about Ghanaians.
Yes,
we
Ghanaians.
We are not talking about NDC supporters and all. So the E-Levy issue is not about the NDC and its party outside against the E-Levy. It's generally Ghanaians from all the work that was done by various research people, that the average Ghanaian didn't want the E-Levy. I mean, whether it is information or misinformation, as my brother puts it, that got out there and persuaded people to be against the E-Levy, for me is not, the people outside obviously influence us also in Parliament. We make our certain decisions based on, we represent people. So certain decisions that we arrive at is based on what our constituents have been telling us. Again, what we say on the floor of Parliament also get to the people. So they also listen to the argument and decide where they want to be. But I think the general consensus, people didn't want the E-Levy. And we, at that stage in Parliament, were truly representing the people from our perspective. And we were clear that we wouldn't support the E-Levy. I think where we stand on the E-Levy, it's not just voting yes or no, but we actually, from the very onset, said we didn't want the E-Levy. Yes, certain events, took place in between, but you see, leadership is tough. And in as much as people will have what they want to say about the reason we walked out, and that is, we actually wanted to see this through in terms of voting. And that is the agreement we had reached.
You wanted to do individual voting?
We wanted to do the voting, yes. We wanted to see it through. I mean, give ourselves a fighting chance, It became a tactical game, in a sense that we were looking at numbers. That's what democracy is about. And it's we have the numbers or they don't have the numbers, that kind of. So we were sort of monitoring, each other. Who is not in, who is being carried in an ambulance, who is where. And they are doing the same thing on us. How we can, maybe how they can get rid of one of our people, one of our MPs, with the issue in court and all that. The very day that the voting took place was the very day that they had actually invited him to court. So there was quite a number of coincidences that didn't actually look like it was just a coincidence, but, So we were checking whether they have the numbers. They were checking whether we had the numbers. So that was what the game was about. And at that stage, it had become a tactical game. that what is the best way out of this? We wanted to stop the E-Levy. That was our objective, by any means necessary, reasonable means. So if at this stage we realize that, okay, they have the numbers, and maybe when we go, this could be tricky, what is the best way out? If we walk out and we sort of use the ruling from the courts, will that help our cause? Everything possible to stop the... But before we went in there, we knew we had our numbers. In fact, I just found out because we were basically charged to make sure that our MPs in the region are all present. So I, for instance, had Kwesi, obviously coming from the central region. So I was trying to make sure that we get him to Parliament. When he told me the night before that he was in court, and all that. So he was in Parliament, but of course he was in his office. As I said, it was a tactical move. So we're looking at whether it would be necessary to bring him in or to wait and do something different. We were told that there was an ambulance sitting at the car park, had one of our honorable members who was not well in it, and I thought that was cruel, you know. I didn't actually believe it. But again, I think it was a tactical move on their side as well to park an empty ambulance at the place and make sure that they got the pictures out to give us the impression that, look, we are ready. We have this guy, we will roll him in to come and vote, and you know, maybe doctors were working on him in the ambulance and all that. Now, eventually we got to the floor, and as we were there, the position is we were going to vote. Then certain information came to leadership that we were not privy to. And as things can be very, very fluid in Parliament. So when that information came, then the strategy had to be, you know, rolled back and something else put in place. So a decision was made at that very moment on the floor by leadership that our better option was to walk out. Because when we walk out, we will not be able to get the voting numbers on their side, I mean, for decision making.
But
based on the 138 issue.
I get the sense, and you've alluded to the narrative you've also read and heard. I get the sense that it's not about maybe the NPP per se winning, but people wanted to see a clear no. So they could say the NDC MPs have stuck through till the very end, even though, fine, maybe on the day, the NPP may have had the numbers and your being there then would have allowed for the quorum. But as it is, you've headed to court. There's no guarantee. This is the same Supreme Court I know there's been criticism of as being biased in favor of the current administration. How do you expect to achieve anything by taking the matter there? And you know the Supreme Court doesn't work in the way that, oh, you file your case today, they hear you tomorrow. Yeah, absolutely. They could very well hear this case in 1 year.
Yes, obviously. We never thought that the courts would be on our side. But as I said, the E-Levy had become an emotional issue. It wasn't just about going there and register your vote and tell Ghanaians that
I voted against it.
You
don't think
we
that...
We wanted to stop it, the E-Levy. We actually wanted to stop it. It was not just playing some kind of a game with the public that we against the E-Levy, we know they will win in the end, so we vote and then they won. We had done our best. We actually, Chifa, wanted to stop the E-Levy.
All right, so
my personal view, my personal view was that we should have stayed and voted.
Okay.
This is my personal view. Okay. But as
I
said,
of course, there's
leadership is tough. They got information that we didn't have. And they, on that information, acted that the best option for us. Because that split second, they had decided that if we walk out, we can then bring in the Supreme Court 138 issue, and whatever they do will not be legitimate. And then we will head to court with a very ruling that had become problematic and give us a fighting chance. The idea for us, we had got to a point where the E-Levy we thought was not a good tax and it must be stopped. It was not a cosmetic thing of just voting and saying that we did our best. We actually, so we deploy all possible strategies. At that 11th hour, the strategy to stop the E-Levy was to walk out to prevent the speaker for putting the question.
Okay, so the speaker...
Unfortunately, he did.
But you had already walked out.
Yeah, well...
Even though the majority leader was calling for the question, it's almost as if the speaker allowed you to go pose the question.
The question I asked is that if they thought what they did was legitimate, why was Honorable Chairman Sabonso trying to push the speaker to put the question when we were there? Because he knew that when we leave, whatever they did probably might not be legitimate. That's why he was shouting on top of his voice, put the question. And then actually when we had our back to the chamber, they said some of us were there, even if we had our back to the chamber, though we were not. But this is a new parliament with so many new things that nobody had ever, experienced. And I do agree with my brother on the issue that we thought this parliament, being a hang parliament as it's described, even though we have an independent person, was an opportunity for us to stop the rubber stamping. Now he's talking about the rubber stamping now being on the other side. The rubber stamping used to be on
whichever is the government side.
Yeah,
but Honorable Opariansa, just a quick one, because he mentioned that if the minority didn't know that the majority didn't know that they needed the numbers, they wouldn't have been asking for the speaker to pose the question. I think that's instructive for me. I didn't think about that.
It's not necessary at all.
Why?
Because per the rules of the House.
Because you can't be posing a question when people are walking out. How do you do that?
I don't think the majority leader was calling for the question to be put because he was afraid that when they leave the chamber, they will lose quorum.
Really?
Yeah. See, when I was minority chief whip and Mrs. Bamfordado was the speaker, there was an occasion when we walked out on a matter and I stayed back alone to raise the issue of quorum, because when we had exited the chamber, we knew that the NDC then, and remember that parliament was also very close. We had 111 members, the NDC had 119. That was a 230-member parliament. So on any given day, we were more than the NDC in the chamber. So when we walked out, our thinking then was that we could bring business to a stop by reducing the number of people in the room. Our leader, similar to what you saw Aruna do, made his submission and then everybody exited. But I was asked to stay back to raise the issue of quorum. Madam's speaker's response to me then was that, although I am there, but I am not there. And that my leader has clearly indicated that my side is walking out.
Yeah.
So whatever happens beyond that point, even if I remain in the chamber, I will not be heard. And so I had to also leave. This is instructive, but most important also is the fact that Parliament, for all intents and purposes, and Honorable Hagan will bear me out, can function with even 10 members in the chamber until somebody out of the 10 rises up to raise the provisions of Order 48, which talks about quorum. Otherwise...
Which the minority had used a few weeks before.
Yes. So,
which I think made the tactical game become more important, because they blocked
the whole
a number
idea,
of agreements that had come to the House.
So the whole idea of this practice of Parliament, and I've seen this happen in the House of Commons, the House of Lords, the US Congress. You go especially during the consideration stage of bills. You find very few people, and yet legislative process will go on, they will carry on. Until somebody raises the matter, Parliament does not see, Parliament does not hear. And the Speaker will continue to preside and guide the House, and it will go according. So, as at now, in the records of Parliament, which is what, and they know that, and so for me it's throwing dust to the eyes of the public heading to Supreme Court. you know that when you go to the Supreme Court will call for the records of Parliament, which will be that votes and proceedings, which was adopted the day after, showing the number of people who were in the House, including your good selves. The reason I was telling you that the majority leader calling for the question to be put wasn't because they were exiting and he thought they would lose quorum. It's because when the question is put, per the rules, whether you heard the question put or not, you can vote. I hope you get my
Because
point.
you're in the precincts of Parliament.
Even if you were on the tarmac at the airport and the motorcade was now bringing you to the House, the rule is that you need not have heard the question being put. That's the standing orders. As long as you get to the chamber before voting is over and you are a member of Parliament, you can vote. So the majority leader calling for the question to be put was not because he thought that when they leave and they didn't hear the question, then it will mean that they did not take part in the voting or that they cannot be counted. They had signed in. Nobody was there to raise any issue that the members in the chamber were not up to a certain number. And I'm sure you've watched parliamentary proceedings several times. So you will notice that as debate carries on, members keep going to the lobbies and the coffee area and meet visitors and come back in. If in this instance, it so happens that, and I think I heard something, that they said Mahama was in the lobby. So if the whole minority people got up to go and meet Mahama and have a chat with him, and then maybe they were going to come back to vote. Who knows?
Okay.
You know,
all right.
so
Interesting thought. Okay, just a quick one because we need to take a break and then we'll come back.
Yeah, where I disagree with it. I think is, this morning trying to think for Chi, but it was clear. His words were clear. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, put the question. They are still
in the chamber.
In the chamber. Yes. So that obviously tells you that the guy was concerned or desperate that if we leave the chamber, whatever they do afterwards will not be legitimate. Things, I think recent events, having this kind of hung parliament, has exposed a lot of things within our laws in terms of our standing orders and the Constitution itself, that there are gaps to be closed, which in the past nobody thought was necessary. We could have 10 people in the chamber and do business. But since all these rulings and all that, as you saw with the loans they brought, things have changed. And that decision of walking out, look, if the last parliament, which my brother was also there, you wouldn't have heard of E-Levy. Nobody would have heard of it. The E-Levy would have been passed without any, but this particular parliament is the reason why the E-Levy issue, and it's not going to be the end. There will be a lot of contentious issues that will come to parliament and will become a national debate because of the nature of the parliament. And a lot of, visits to court will happen. Whether they will be in our favor or not will happen. Because a lot of things are going to come up that the law at the moment is gray, or certain things were not tightened because it had never happened. The law itself is relevant to the time that, but over the years, that's where there are constitutional reviews and all that.
And I understand your standing orders are also under review.
Yes, under review. And we are trying to, obviously, close some of these gaps. Look at the problem that the speaker and the deputy speakers been having, where speaker makes a ruling, deputy, he finds a gap in the standing orders or in the rules to be able to do that. So all these things, I think this parliament is a very important one, not to say that the other parliaments were not, but at a point where certain things that's been in our statutory books for years, without anybody having any issue with it, will be looked at. These days, even the register that you and I used to go and sign, now is being carried around.
It's become a subject of scrutiny.
No, it's being carried around, not sometimes, is being actually handled by the clerks.
Even in the last parliament, there were
Yeah.
Okay,
registers being
let me take a quick break and we'll come back because I think we've done this key issue about what this has thrown up. Let's take some messages quickly. This one from Aziz in Wa. The passage of the killer E-Levy is unfair and unfortunate. Government must address the economic crisis we find ourselves in and stop the unprecedented spending. A.U. Farouk from Tamale North. Good morning to you all. The laws of the country under the current NPP administration is not working well. The politicization of the judiciary by the government is also reducing trust Ghanaians have for the bench. Since the president ignored the law and signed the E-Levy into law, our case in court will be null and void. So I get it that maybe you are an NDC member, so the case will be null and void. This one from Abbas at Ofinso. Where is Dr. Baumia? From economic wizard to digital man. I'm disappointed in this administration. The hardship is unprecedented. We are suffering because of the poor management of the CD. And realities have now exposed this government. Everything is in a mess. This one from Akwesi Motown. Hello, Jifa. The Black Stars qualifications to the World Cup is a great achievement, and the group we find ourselves in will challenge us to improve. We will qualify out of the group stages. I love your optimism. Kubaji from Jinjini. Jifa, have we paused for a minute to find out why the majority leader was insisting that the speaker put the question when the minority sought to exit the chamber? For me, it tells me that the majority didn't have the required numbers to pass the bill. And this final one from Big Secretary in Tamale. I'll have to come and do a show in Tamale. Most of my texters and a lot of my viewers send me message from there. This one says, good morning, Jifa. The passing of the E-Levy into law demonstrates the resoluteness of the economic management team, particularly the person of Dr. Baumia, to offer homegrown solutions to our economic challenges without having to go to the Bretton Woods institutions. Thank you, Suleimana from Tamale. And those were some of your messages. We'll bring you some more. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Thanks very much for staying with us here on The Key Point. Now let's address the legal issues quickly with the Director for Legal Affairs for the NDC, Abraham Amaleba, who joins us via Zoom. Now, good day, Mr. Amaleba, and thank you for making some time for us here on TV3 and 3FM's Key Points. Good day.
Thank you for having me. Good morning to your viewers as well.
Great. So I guess the main question many are asking is, with the passing of the E-Levy into law and the assent by the president, doesn't this impact the minorities' case, which it sought to challenge the quorum issues in Parliament and saying that the passing of the E-Levy is illegal?
Well, legally, the matter is still subsisting. The signing of the bill into law does not stop the Supreme Court from hearing the matter and going ahead to give a decision as to whether 137 could form a quorum to take that decision. Legally, it is still on the front burner. But if you want to find out what would be the impact of that signing of the bill into law, then I would say that apart from attempting to overreach the Supreme Court, it also will put undue pressure on the Supreme Court. And I thought that as president and as a lawyer who has practiced in our law courts for close to 30 years, the president should have adopted what I would term as a wait-and-see approach, where he would have waited to allow the court to determine the matter, and then he can go ahead. Because we know that this is coming into force in May, and we have the whole of April. The Supreme Court also knows how urgent this matter is. It's not going to be one of the issues that the Supreme Court would decline not to mention and to be lying there for a long time, as happens in other cases. This is a matter of national interest, It's akin to the Abdullahi case, so there was no way that the Supreme Court could just shelve it. And so I thought that the president should have adopted a wait-and-see attitude.
Does that mean that if the case, for instance, is not called anytime soon, the party may be forced to withdraw it, or you will wait whatever length of time the court takes to hear this case, you will wait?
Well, we cannot control and dictate to the Supreme Court on what cases they should mention, but I know expeditious hearing of matters of national interest has always been on the forefront of what the Supreme Court does. And that's why, how come the Abdullahi case did not take long for the matter to be determined. There are other cases that didn't take long because of its implication and the interests of the nation in those matters. So I would find it difficult to come to the conclusion that you are coming to, that are we going to wait till whenever the Supreme Court decides to call? It is going to be soon, and they cannot choose in some other matters which are of national interest, mention or call them in good time. And in this particular one, because it's coming from the minority, they won't do that. I don't think they will do that. They will want to be seen to be fair to all shades of opinions in this country.
I know that there's a general perception that the Supreme Court seems to favor the government in office in recent times. Now, bearing that in mind, are you prepared already for an outcome that does not favor your side? What would you then do in such an instance?
The Supreme Court is a state institution, not a particular government's institution. So if we are approaching the Supreme Court, we are approaching it as a state institution. Now, if you ask whether we are prepared for the outcome of their decision, we are. But that is not to say that if a judgment seems to be against the weight of evidence, it is not within our right to point that out. So, for instance, the simple matter in court is 137. Can 137 form a quorum to take a decision? And luckily for us, in the Abdullahi case, the Supreme Court itself made a pronouncement and said that Article 104 is clear, and that it must be half of members of Parliament. And so if the Supreme Court 3 weeks ago made that statement, we await to see what other statement they will make now that this matter directly bordering on the same comments they made or the same ruling they made is before them. So yes, we are prepared for the ruling of the Supreme Court, but where that ruling is against the weight of evidence or is against the principles as enunciated by the Supreme Court itself, it will be critique. And so it is within our right to also critique any judgment if that judgment is against the weight of evidence or is against the principles of law.
So finally, Mr. Maliba, looking at the fact that this will be implemented from May, what do you anticipate will be the reaction of, general members of the public? Are you one of those who feel that people will exit electronic platforms, whether it's all these fintech platforms or the mobile network platforms? Do you project that?
Indeed, the government itself, I heard the Deputy Finance Minister make this statement clearly that they are aware, their research has indicated that when this is implemented, they will have reduced numbers. People would begin to withdraw their money from their mobile money wallets. That they are aware themselves. As to whether people will begin to go back to the platforms and begin to use the Momo platforms as they are predicting is another question. But they are aware that a lot of people will exit the mobile money platforms. And already, I think within this week, on Thursday or so, the mobile monies, they are executive. One of them indicated that people have started rushing to withdraw money. So definitely it will affect, and the government itself is aware of that.
Right. Thank you very much, Abraham Amaleva, for giving us that legal perspective here on key points. So let me come back to our studio guest. So Honorable Ricketts Hagan, what do you project? Will people exit their mobile network operators, platforms, all these other fintech, whether it's EasyPay, ZPay, whatever they're called? You think people will leave? They have a month to do so if they choose to.
I think quite a number of examples littered across other African countries.
I know Uganda and Kenya.
Yeah, where when this thing came in, their form of E-Levy came in, people actually sort of stopped using the service.
But to be fair, there was no cap for those I've read. There was no cap. It was an application of the levy. However, here, there is a threshold. If you do a transfer up to 300 cedis, you don't pay E-Levy.
Well, whether that would be good enough reason for people to continue to use the service or not. But I think the general view is that initial reaction will be that people will stop using the service or think more before they use it. You know, it's like electricity. When your bills are going up, then you begin to see the need for switching off lights when you are not in a room, you know. So that will happen initially. But then I think this government, and from all the conversations that I've listened to, they are banking on the idea that we can no longer live without these technologies, and that people would show an initial resistance to the E-Levy, but eventually they will have no choice. This is Ken Oforiatta's words. They will have no choice but to go back to the service. Whether that will happen or not, we live to see. But I have always said, Chifa, that, and we don't want the E-Levy. Now it's got it passed. We see what happens. But when you look at the situation that we're in, the E-Levy is not actually the solution. And
to the economic problems.
To the economic problems. And what we are getting from the E-Levy now probably work out around 6 billion or so.
Okay, now it's less than that because it didn't start in January as was expected.
We will do the discount of all that. So you would think probably, let's say 6 billion is what they expect to get. If you take 1 quarter is already gone, so that's like 1.5 billion is gone. And then it's going to start in May. So let's say about some 1.7 or something, they go, let's say 2 billion. So they're going to end up in a year with 4 billion. But it's not just an event. It's something that's going to go on the next year and the years after. So the money, hopefully will come in. But the problem we have at the moment is not just increasing revenue to the 100 billion that we are looking at. The issue is more complex than that. If you look at the exchange, I look at the exchange rate, the reserves, and the paying of our foreign debt. It is not a problem with the E-Levy. It's not a problem that will be resolved with the E-Levy. When you are looking at those areas, you are looking for hard currency. And by hard currency, I mean dollars. You are not going to be collecting. One of the things that actually creates exchange rate problems is when you are using cedis to look for dollars. Okay? So if government is going to earn revenue in cedis and try to convert that revenue in cedis into dollars to prop up the reserves and support the exchange rate, that itself is going to create problems for government. And that money, as we said, is going to be tops 4 billion this year, or probably even less. So the structure of the economy, as we have all said, is one problem. The management of the economy in terms of not only revenue, but also expenditure rationalization. all these 30% and stuff that they are talking about, if you look at it, they said discretionary areas and all that. You sit down and look through the budget, the rigidity of our budget does not even allow for any of these things that they are talking about. So in the end, the borrowing somehow will continue. The painful thing that is going to happen from now on is that this government will resist any attempt to go near, institutions like the IMF or whatever to get relief. So they are going to do things expensively to make sure that they avoid that. And that will mean commercial borrowing. The other day we were talking about 2 billion from the central bank to,
Yes, over the next 2 to 6 weeks.
And then I went back and looked at it. And I realized that it's actually a loan. Because when you think about it, Bank of Ghana is not going to use, it's not the reserves. They say, if you read the text, it says external financing arrangement. External means that it's outside the Bank of Ghana with other people. So we are actually borrowing them. And by the way, the Bank of Ghana is the bank of the government. Any loan transactions that we do, especially with the capital market and with the banks and all that, is done on behalf of government by the Bank of Ghana. Even when you go for Eurobond, it is Bank of Ghana that takes the Eurobond money, not the government itself. So any borrowing by government is actually done by Bank of Ghana on behalf of the government. So this 2 billion will become a debt.
So we are still going to be in more debt.
We are still going to be in more debt.
Okay, let me come to the Honorable Opare answer. What do you make of his thoughts?
Let me quickly comment on
Abraham's comments, sure.
We should be a little careful with what we are doing as politicians. I listened to something Honorable Ricketts said earlier about the NDC doing everything that it can to, and he said so legally, to try and stop E-Levy. It is clear that all the attempts by the NDC, they may know that it will not yield the desired results, but they still want to push it as far as possible and milk it as much as they can politically. He, being a lawyer, spoke about the weight of the evidence that they are taking to the Supreme Court. And that based on that, whatever the pronouncements are that the Supreme Court will make, they also reserve the right to comment or seek for review and all that. See, you are talking about an earlier ruling of the Supreme Court.
Which the feeling is it didn't go far enough.
But which was based on record. If you are going to court now on the passage of the E-Levy, and you are talking 137 people passed the E-Levy, I'm yet to see any record anywhere. And the Supreme Court, like all courts, work on evidence. They can't give a judgment you are seeking or give you what you are asking for because you are saying that is so. You have to demonstrate. You have to show the court. You have to give them evidence and prove your case. I said earlier that the way Parliament functions, somebody would have had to raise a matter inside Parliament, ask for a head count, ask for a division. Someone would have had to cause something to be done, assuming without admitting that there was 137 people who were in the room, so that it would have gone into the records of Parliament. Then you can produce that in the Supreme Court to back your case. As it stands now, there is no such thing. And then the NDC they know this. They have very good lawyers. They have good MPs who know what I'm talking about. Yet they've proceeded to the Supreme Court.
The fact that no one called for quorum on that day,
or a head count,
does not also make it the truth that there was.
Yes, but my point is, will you be able to show that and prove that in court? You and I know that when you go to court, there's a burden of proof on you. You are alleging something, and so you have to prove. You're going to court to say that when the E-Levy bill was passed, Parliament did not have the quorum to do so. It rests with you to prove that. Do you have the necessary evidence to prove this case? And my point is that they know they do not have that. Yet they will go to court, lose the case, and then they will deepen the feeling that the Supreme Court is doing the bidding of the sitting government. You continue to go to court. Go to my Facebook page and read an article I posted before the Supreme Court came to its decision concerning Articles 102 and 104 about the status of the deputy speakers and their decisions and their ability to be counted or vote and all that. It is so straightforward. It's so easy to understand.
So for you, you think that their actions is what will deepen a potential for disaffection for the Supreme Court?
What is worrying for me is I've been in the house with a lot of them, and I know they know the things I also know. They understand it, and yet they keep on going to court with flimsy, if you will, cases. And then when they lose, they turn around and say that recently the Supreme Court seems to be taking decisions in favor of the ruling government. But that is far from the truth.
Okay.
Now,
I wanted you to address what
I'm
Rick is,
there now.
Honorable Rick said, but now he wants to respond to that, so I have to allow him.
I'll come back to
come
you.
and then you come back on the other issue.
I disagree with
you disagree.
Yeah, I disagree with him. And, I think there are a lot of things in our books that we have worked with in the past, and it worked well for us. But, Honorable, with the 137 that we have in Parliament, and what has happened?
As an independent member.
Yes, independent.
But we all know he's working for you.
Yeah, but
we all know he's working for
it's
the
no secret. He declared.
Yes.
But there are only two sides.
But if you say, because anytime this issue comes out, and then they say, the NPP likes to make it convenient and say, oh, there's an independent.
But he is an independent.
We all know where he's working for.
A lot of things are not secret anymore in Parliament. And that even includes the number of people number of MPs who were in the room. Everybody knows that Honorable Joseph was not there. Everybody knows that Honorable
Kojo Kum
was not
we are told they are
so that brings the number to 136.
If I can chip that in, see, what you know and what you can prove in court.
That's what I'm saying.
There's a world of difference between
it can be proved.
You can know someone killed somebody. You probably even saw it. But to prove that in court, it's a different matter.
The records are there.
That is what I am looking for.
Yeah,
the record of the number of people who actually took the vote.
It will be
because
provided.
the vote for the passage of the E-Levy was a voice vote. So where are you going to get a record of the number of people who voted?
Well, we had
there was no head count, there was no division, there was no secret balloting. So there is simply a voice vote.
We are talking about a quorum here.
Yes.
For decision making.
Yes.
And the court has ruled that it has to be 138.
I agree. I understand that.
From the register.
But my point
knows
is
the number of MPs who were there.
Yes, so but knowing that there's the view that if you are in the precincts of Parliament, you are deemed to be present.
Apart from that, Jifa, where's the record? But where's the record to show how many people were in the room? That is the matter of
10 kilometers, 10 miles. Honorable Kojo was nowhere around. Whether he was the one in the ambulance or not, that's another issue. But this is a case, Honorable, that can be proven. We can prove this case.
Okay, so let's wait and see that, because I want to. Yes, you had the comment you wanted to make on it.
I've also looked at the NDC's position on the E-Levy, and again, I'm struggling to find out exactly what they are saying is wrong with the E-Levy. Is it because it's electronic, or is it because it is a levy?
Let me tell you. Just in one sentence.
Yes.
NDC and Ghanaians are against the E-Levy because of the reckless spending of this government.
So you see.
So that's one. That's one.
Yes.
But Honorable
he said in one sentence.
Okay, but Honorable. So he made that. But
yes.
Honorable, I think clearly the points really are about what is being taxed. And Honorable Haruna Idrisu said, whatever people put on their wallet or expend electronically are savings after they've paid their income taxes and other taxes, whether it's
Which is
withholding
not
tax
entirely
and
true.
all that.
That is
And
not
so you are taxing people's savings, people's capital, and also people's
that is
So,
intellectual.
Jifa,
That's the intellectual argument.
Jifa, the two things
But
I've
the
heard here
general
now.
But the
two things I've heard here now. One is what Honorable Ricketts alluded to, that people are worried about how the monies will be spent. If you are worried,
No, the current administration's
the-
previous
yeah,
record
record
of spending, which doesn't
I am
demonstrate.
the wasteful expenditure, the recklessness, the luxury expenditure.
Your worry
is
is
what-
not about the tax itself. Your worry is about the proceeds of the tax. I'll come to it.
There are two reasons.
The other reason
I'm just
I'll
giving
come to, I
you
wanted
the
to isolate the
ordinary
reasons
man. Okay,
so,
so
we
you-
address them.
Okay.
So that is one. How the proceeds of the tax will be spent is your problem. The other problem that Haruna alluded to is the application. How the tax. Now, when you look at the law, there are two schedules to the law. One has to do with who will be required to apply the tax. And the other schedule is what activities will attract the tax.
Okay. So I'll just quickly,
responsible thing-
I'll quickly read that for you since I
please
just have
do.
it here. It says types of transfers covered.
Yes, that's Schedule 2.
So this is Schedule 2.
Yes.
1, mobile money transfers done between accounts on the same electronic money issuer.
Okay.
Mobile money transfers from an account on one electronic money issuer
Yes.
to a recipient on another electronic money issuer.
Okay.
Transfers from bank accounts to mobile money accounts. Transfers from mobile money accounts to bank accounts. Now, bank transfers on an instant pay digital platform or application originating from a bank account belonging to an individual subject to a threshold to be determined by the minister.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm not sure the minority and the NDC are saying that everything contained in Schedule 2 is wrong. The responsible thing to do as an opposition group would have been to sit in Parliament and to file amendments to remove from this schedule those line items that you disagree with. I challenge the NDC to show me the amendments that they filed in Parliament concerning the concerns that they had.
But how do
about,
they do that when they don't even want the law at all?
But I have asked, why don't you want the law? You say that 1, the proceeds. 2, it is to do with these line
Okay,
items.
but
you have, and again,
But Honorable
the
Pariansa,
utilization.
let's be fair.
Yes.
I receive my salary.
Yes.
I pay
No,
an
hold-
income
hold-
tax.
hold that.
Or let
That
me
is-
just use the example.
I understand
pay an
all the
income.
things you're
yes,
saying.
And
And I
then
share
I
in
put
some of
this
the things you're
amount
saying, so
on
you are
the phone.
comfortable.
And then I now have to, my child tells me, oh, mommy, we need PE kit at school. Okay,
Yes.
how much is it? I pay through mobile money. I order something, I buy something, and they deliver it here at TV3. I pay for it. It means
So
I've
Jiva-
already been taxed on my salary. Yet this
Jiva-
money, small money I've put on my mobile account,
Jiva-
you are chipping away at it on
when you pay VAT, sales tax, other taxes, you still pay your income tax.
I agree with
so
you.
we will come to what I'm saying is that, so if the NDC had disagreements with, say, Momo, and they think it should be structured a little differently, they had the amendments process in Parliament to come through that. I haven't seen that.
Why
happen.
is that burden on the NDC?
Because I'm not saying the NDC.
Or
I'm
the
saying
opposition.
Parliament.
Okay, but
It is the responsibility of Parliament. And I
yes,
have,
but so that's the issue.
Yes.
Those who were in the House
Yes.
at the consideration
Yes.
stage where some of these changes were
Yes.
made, they didn't change any of this.
But those who were complaining,
my
those who
Momo
were-
is linked to a
those-
bank account.
You assume the MPP people were not the ones complaining, the NDC people.
Yeah,
they
well,
have made the point. Let them demonstrate that in action in Parliament, because you have the opportunity to affect it. Honorable was talking about the utilization of the proceeds. In 2008, when we were passing communication service tax, it was Honorable Linus Afuseni, after discussions, and they giving an indication that they would want to see those funds, some of it applied to the direction of youth employment, who raised or filed an amendment and raised the issue of applying 20% of the communication service tax to youth employment. He was in opposition, and those of us in the majority then, I was then Deputy Minister for Communications, We all argued in support of that, and it became law. You don't run away from the passage of a bill on these two counts when you have the mechanisms through which you can effect the changes that you seek. It is different if you went to file an amendment to, let's say, protect the usage of electronic levy funds when it accrues to government, to say, for instance, that, look, we are so interested to see what you use these proceeds for. Government, create an electronic levy fund, deposit the funds in, and like President Kufuor did with HIPIC, whenever you spend our E-Levy, right on whatever infrastructure or whatever service it delivers, the E-Levy benefits, so that we know that we are seeing the benefits of our E-Levy that you are collecting. You could have asked government or through parliament by the passage of this bill to include this in the law. When I was in parliament in 2016, the NDC came through the Ministry of Communications to amend the Electronic Communications Act to give power to an entity called the Interconnect Clearing House, the ICH, which was also being given power to do what KLGVG is doing today. I disagreed. I did not run from parliament. I filed an amendment then as an opposition MP to bar the ICH from delivering revenue assurance services to government on the simple reason that it is an interconnect clearing house and we are charging the communication service tax on interconnect traffic. So itself was going to be subjected to the payment of communication service tax, and you were asking that entity to also be the one to assure government of those revenues. And the House together supported me, and we passed by amendments. So if any member of the House, whether they are in the opposition or they are in government, had an issue with the E-Levy, the most responsible thing to have done for me would have been to sit through the consideration stage of the bill, file your amendments. And as Honorable knows, at the consideration stage of a bill, you need not have even given notice of the amendment. You can seek the Speaker's intervention to go ahead straight away.
Honorable,
you know,
things have changed.
with Speaker Babi.
No, things have changed.
With Speaker Babi.
With government.
A government doesn't control parliament.
That we got to where we got to as a result of the finance minister failing to do the necessary consultation before all these bills are brought to the House. That's what got us to
the
where
parliamentary committees can do more engagement, better engagement than the ministries.
The lack of information, the difficulties in negotiating. The government didn't want to negotiate. Look, I was part of some of these meetings, and the minister would not even shift. I mean, you know, you go to a negotiation because you are willing to give and take. These guys were coming to negotiate from the position where they stood, and unless you shift towards them, they are not shifting towards you.
But Honorable, the minister...
Are they such tough negotiators?
But Honorable, Article 174 is clear. It is not the minister's prerogative to impose tax. It is the prerogative of Parliament to impose tax.
Okay, but
the minister only brought you proposals.
Okay, but I think he raises an interesting and I think an important issue.
Yes.
That if the discussions had been had and these 5 schedules had been discussed, then potentially you could have had these changes made before the bill actually comes to the floor.
That's the point I'm making, that it is not necessary.
It didn't happen.
No, it is not necessary.
No,
let me give you another example.
So that the stalemate and the acrimony would not have persisted.
Let me give you another example so you see the power of Parliament. When President Kufuor brought the Lotto bill to the House, he sought to monopolize Lotto operations for government. They were kicking out all the private Lotto operators, Asara Original Payall, Rambells, you name them. It was Parliament, after the Finance Committee had engaged various stakeholders, including the private lotto operators. Parliament then decided we will not grant the government the power to monopolize this. We will grant the government the power to regulate the sector. And that is why National Lotteries Authority was set up. And then individuals or organizations who are interested in running lotto businesses could now be licensed as lotto marketing companies by the National Lotteries Authority. And then they can run their business under the supervision of the NLA. So governments will always bring their proposals to the House.
We know the power of Parliament,
yes.
and we even know it better now.
Okay.
And that is what we're doing.
But you are not exercising your power well.
We are using it.
No.
It is the exercise
You're
of power
playing
that has
to the
got
gallery.
us where we are.
The power of Parliament is to make laws. You exhibit. You came let me show you one classical example.
To make laws.
No, you came
the
to.
The power of Parliament is to make laws or not to make them.
You came
it's not just to
on
go and make laws.
The eve of 7th January. You came to Parliament. You had 137 votes, right, from your caucus. The MPP had 137 votes. And the independent, as the way our side, the Parliament works, the independent would have had to declare which side he would do business with, so that that side can seat him. So clearly the MPP came with a caucus of 137 plus 1. And then you came with 137. Why did you go ahead to file the nomination of Mr. Bagbin to become the Speaker? Why didn't you chicken out because the numbers didn't add up for you? But you went ahead, fought, and got Bagbin elected as Speaker. If you believed really that E-Levy is bad, the NDC should have stayed. Today you are telling us that the ambulance that was sitting there, you were not even sure whether Honorable Kojokum was inside.
That's what I'm saying.
But
we were told
so you got scared of an empty ambulance.
The media also learned that. But the truth, but the other issue.
If you have been in Parliament, that ambulance is always sitting there.
No, it's a different ambulance from what I understand. It's not the typical one we know. It's usually in the house. I understand it's a different one.
In front of the fountain.
But the heat of the E-Levy debates, they needed to position the ambulance well.
You wanted to make a point, so let me let you make it, then I'll come back to it.
Honourable should appreciate that we know the power of Parliament. We've been using the power of Parliament, but we've now got into a situation where we even realize the power that we have as an opposition. In the past, we have this saying, opposition will have their say, or the minority will have their say, and majority will have their way. That is not the case anymore. It is difficult for any majority of 137 or 138 to have their way now. That is why this E-Levy thing has gone on and on and on and on, because we've been challenging it from day one. But part of the problem is that you are working or dealing with people who are not ready to negotiate or ready to shift. Look, what it took the finance minister to move from 1.7 to 1.5 would have moved the mountain. But this guy was not ready to shift. I don't know why he's become so fixated.
I don't know about that.
Okay,
well, but I know he's passionate about solving the economic problems of the country.
So, but that is the issue that Honorable Ricketts raised earlier, but you didn't quite address that.
Yeah.
The view is that our problems started way before COVID. We've borrowed so much. There's a view that not all of us can see what has been spent.
But that was not a problem pre-COVID.
That is not true.
COVID just exposed the challenges. That is the general view.
The minister has given you the amount of revenue that was supposed to accrue to us that did not accrue, okay, and the amount of expenditure that was committed because of COVID, and it's something in excess of
17.1.
No, that is what was used in.
Okay.
But revenues that would accrue, which didn't accrue,
which didn't come because of
the expenditure that he had to incur, which was not planned for, and that is an additional gap, a deficit that we had to suffer. Okay, he has given us this.
So you disagree that the economy was fragile?
It was not fragile pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
That is the point I'm making. And the minister, and both the minister and the president, in their respective addresses, alluded to the challenges we are having. The minister pointed out why we've gotten to where we've gotten to so quickly. He mentioned 3 things which nobody could have anticipated post the budget 2022, regional 2022 budget. That one, he did not expect the parliament that had accepted the proposals of government in the budget, including E-Levy, to now turn around and say that they are going to vote against E-Levy.
No, but
he also did not.
You know
just
that
like you are saying
when we have
that
tax, we have tax in the budget.
Yes.
Usually, after the budget, there has to be a tax bill.
Absolutely, I agree.
And that is the process that we're
we haven't seen this
the fact
before.
That we have approved the budget doesn't mean that we have approved everything in the budget.
Yes, but if you did not approve everything in the budget,
the budget is an estimate.
It is an estimate. Yeah. It's also a list of proposals.
Sure.
So the proposal to institute E-Levy was contained in the budget. Not only that, you went ahead and approved the appropriation.
Don't also
bill.
forget the drama that took place in the approval of the budget itself.
That is why I'm going a step forward.
And there's a question here with regard to that. Let me just read it. It's from Salifu. It says, so when the majority walked out and the minority passed the budget, who stayed on the majority side to raise a case of quorum?
Good. At that point,
isn't it the same thing that also had happened that was later overturned by the majority?
Makin had asked for division, so they had counted the members there, and it was in the records. That is the difference. That is the difference I was alluding to earlier. That if somebody has stayed back from the minority side to ask for, say, head count, and that is why I told you what Madam Speaker told me when I tried to do the same thing. So precedent had been set. So even if somebody has stayed back,
a lot of water had gone under the bridge since then. And we've gotten to a point where we've got a ruling from the Supreme Court that to have a decision quorum, you need 138
that's why
members there.
That's why I was surprised that they went to court. Article 104 is clear about that. That to take decisions in Parliament, there must be present and voting in the House at least 1/2 of all members of Parliament.
And 1/2 is 138 for the numbers that we have.
And that still is an issue. So, okay, Honorable Parayansa, there's a question here, and I think you may have to address it, but you can also address it from Seth, and he asks, why should pensioners whose pension receipts are tax exempt be subjected to E-Levy tax only by reason of accessing the convenience of transferring their money from a bank account to a mobile money account? And this is because some banks provide a service where you have your money sitting in your account, it's linked to your mobile money account, and you can pull that amount. They don't charge you anything for it. But now, in the case of pensioners...
The reason I was saying that the opposition did...
Oh, that's too much of a burden to put on the opposition.
But let me
it's like you're holding the NDC to a higher standard.
Yes, because
I'm not sure that's fair.
Standard.
I'm not sure if that's fair.
All I was saying was that you can make your point about not supporting the law, about not supporting aspects of it, by staying, debating, filing amendments, and going through that motion, so that what emerges
that's a choice
will
under the
benefit all of us. Because so far, I'm here to
I
hear
think the stakes for E-Levy were too high.
Yeah, we're different.
They were too high.
Who raised the stakes? Who raised those stakes so high? See, the good thing with the law, the good thing.
So, Honorable Ricketts,
I wanted to address that for
okay, yes, please, quickly, so that he can address
the laws, the minister is usually given some discretionary powers, and it runs in almost all.
Yes, it's in it's 0.5 on the second
where
schedule.
he can come by regulations. So these are some of the things that, as they roll out the application of the law, it will come to light, and you expect the minister to quickly go by regulations or whatever means.
And then maybe he will say for pensioners, they should be exempt.
That is one. The other one is the practice notes that will be issued by the GRA. That is another way by which they will be able to provide these little exemptions, because the law has given them the power to roll out these practice notes in a way that will make the application of this law most effective. So the issue they raise about pensioners, all these little arguments can be addressed either through regulations or through the practice notes.
Okay, Honorable
Well,
Ricketts,
you know,
for you.
as I said earlier on, there are actually academic or intellectual reasons why we think the E-Levy was a bad one.
Okay.
One of them is
Let's hear that.
obviously with this pensions. We've talked about savings. We've talked about, money on people's wallet that, government just wants to take it away from them and all that. And this pension becomes one of them. The other side of the argument also, as I mentioned earlier on, is there if we can put the word, a common man's thinking that this government has not really been, as Nana, His Excellency the President, the protector of the public purse, but rather they've been squandering the public purse.
I don't have evidence of that. I don't know.
Well, there's evidence of 15,000, per hour, flights. if that's not a reckless spending, then I don't know what is. So all these things were problematic, and put all together became the reason why the nation was rejecting the E-Levy. So this is definitely one of them, and it's one of the strong reasons that the E-Levy should have been rejected.
Okay, but he makes the point. He makes the point that as we are raising these issues, and I know that there are people who are close to the finance ministry who will be watching, or ministry information will be taking some of these feedback. It gives the option for the finance minister and the GRA to issue the regulations. He points out where it now details those who are exempt.
Well, hope they do. If they have addressed or approached this in a much better way, all these things would have come to light before a president. We are talking about these things after presidents have actually assented to law.
But the law that the president has assented to includes the leeway for the minister and the
I'm
GRA
saying
to
that
do the things
some of the things we are talking about
should
have been addressed earlier. He put a bill in Parliament and started going on a town hall tour.
Because of the propaganda the NDC had put out there.
And then the town hall tour, he did six regions or something. So I don't know whether
I think they did 10.
Oh, so the other 6, they don't matter.
Honorable Hager, please, let's not make it look that way.
It is the approach of this whole thing is what has been problematic to me. That you want to do something like, look, all these things you are talking about and all the bills you've talked about in the past, the approach was completely different. People were talking to each other and things were being addressed.
Okay, but do you concede that if the government had eaten humble pie and withdrawn this bill, it would take a long time for them to bring it back?
Well,
why did the government have to withdraw?
No, that is if we want to go by the argument of what happened with VAT 3 decades ago.
Yeah.
Obviously, at that time, there was really not much social media and all that. Now, many people are woke. So, if the government withdraws it, they won't be able to bring it back for a long time.
I have made a point earlier on that this E-Levy should be the least of this government's problems. And that there are bigger fish to fry. That I don't know whether they are not seeing it. But from where I sit, the things I see in this economy, I don't.
Who are the bigger fish?
I don't want to.
But you don't want to tell us the bigger fish.
The bigger fish is the debt.
Oh, okay.
The second bigger one is the exchange rate and the reserves of the central bank itself, where the hard currency of dollars are going to come from to replenish the reserves, so the reserves can support the exchange rate and support our external debt payment.
But Diva,
failing to do these things will create a much serious problem for us. The growth that we need, the growth that we are anticipating post-COVID, we are not going to get it. If we have inflation, is another one. Where the inflation is coming from at the moment, when you go elsewhere, they will tell you, oh, there's inflation everywhere. Look at the inflation and where it's coming from. The inflation, yes, there's the war and the pandemic. But the bulk of the inflation in many other countries are coming from demand as a result of recovery. In Ghana, the inflation we have, the bulk of it is coming from food. A food where we have a program, a government program, where a lot of the borrowing or the money we had borrowed had gone into planting for food and job. This is the only country that the more food we plant, the less we harvest. And there are two things to indicate that, and that is inflation and your growth. If you look at the contribution of agriculture or crops, which is what we are growing, as a contributor to your GDP, you realize that from 2017 to date, it's been declining. So what are we growing, Jifa? That is putting us in. You look at inflation. Why is the bulk of inflation food? Now they're going to be talking about wheat from Ukraine that is not arriving. But we have a program specific. If we didn't have it, it would have been a different issue. But we have a flagship program where we are planting for food and jobs, where billions of money this government has pumped into this area. Yet, we have no food security. We have high inflation on food, over 17%, unprecedented, especially when you are a country with a specific program. If you are not doing anything about the problem, and the problem is escalating, then maybe it's because you are not doing anything. But when you are studying and you are failing, then there's a problem.
So for you, those are the bigger fish to fry. Okay, I'll let you go. And
the
we'll be wrapping up on this segment shortly.
The Minister of Finance was very clear in what the causal factors of these things are. And he stated them when he did make his address.
Certainly the depreciating CD.
Yes.
Certainly the cost of fuel on the international market.
I mentioned earlier about him mentioning the cost on government that was unplanned, and then the revenue shortfalls that were occasioned. He also talked about not expecting Parliament to turn around the way they did. And the other thing he mentioned was the behavior of the minority in Parliament, their intransigence, if you will. And also, just as you were also talking about the finance minister not budget, I'm sure he also got a feeling that you were also not understanding.
Was a reaction?
Yes, he has cited that, and the effect this has had on investor confidence and how it is causing capital flight and, as you know, dumping of bonds and other things, and how this in turn affects our forex. I'm not too sure about your
but you see the issue. But you see, but Honorable Pariansa, the issue you raise about the shortfalls in revenues and all that, we got so much money from the World Bank. Yes. You know, to deal with COVID and all that. We got so much, more than 400 million, I think, and other money. So I'm just looking for the table which I know lists those amounts. So it also then raises questions about whether really the government is being fair by saying that it didn't get the money. It's received so much money. Commodity prices were at
when you say that, we will also then say government also spent so much money in paying for our free water, our free electricity.
But you said it was free. You didn't tell us we will pay. Then we should have just paid them.
But you see, this is the problem. When government tells you something is free, a lot of people, the ordinary person, begins to think that when I'm paying electricity bills, I'm paying it to government. When I'm paying water bill, I'm paying it to government. And for that matter, when government tells me electricity is free or water is free, it simply means that monies that I would have otherwise paid to government, I will no longer pay. But that is not so. There is a cost of providing the service of delivering water to you. There is a cost of providing the service of electricity to you. And when you pay your bills, it goes to the electricity company or the Ghana Water Company, not to government. So when government tells you that I'm delivering these services free of charge to you, it means government is actually taking money from some other source. There is an opportunity cost there. Something else government would have done, which would have probably brought in some other benefits that would accrue to society, accrue to government, will no longer be happening. And then government takes that money to go and pay for your bills. So when you say government received...
You are getting too intellectual about this thing.
I thought you said there was an intellectual problem. I thought you said there was an intellectual problem.
We were promised a free water now on this particular issue.
Yeah, that's why I'm explaining that when government tells you, so you think government is not paying any bills for the free SHS? That the school fees you were paying before was going to government? Government carries money and pays to the secondary schools. You know that, for the administration, for tuition, for so much cost. So when government tells you something is free as service, it doesn't mean that government is not expending money in delivering that to you. I was saying that when Jifa says, but government got so much money to do this, then I'm tempted to respond by saying that, but government also spends so much money. So the bottom
But you
line,
also introduced the COVID levy.
yes,
to recover the money you had borrowed.
Yes.
But you had the money upfront. You had over 30 billion upfront,
yes,
which you spent during the COVID period. So you could offer a free
but I
water
don't
for
think
that
that introducing the COVID levy, recovery levy, was to say that we were using that to pay some monies we borrowed or
Well, what are you using?
only.
That's what it
Not
is.
necessarily,
No,
but
the understanding of a COVID
Okay,
levy
so
is to pay the money we borrowed to
yes,
cover ourselves during the COVID
the COVID period, yes.
So I hope one day that levy will stop.
Good.
I'm sure I've seen recovery levies coming over almost every government, and at some point, there's always a sunset.
Okay. So, Honorable Opariansa, how will we see accountability for these funds? I've heard Kwame Jantwa of the CPP suggest that there should have been a separate account where the money goes into. It was only last Thursday or Friday in Parliament, the Honorable Minta Akando said they had to ask officials of the National Health Insurance to leave because funds had accrued to the levy more than 2 billion and only 100 million has been disbursed, seeing all the challenges in the health sector and all the delays in paying. How do we be sure there's accountability? Otherwise, this money will just go into the consolidated fund and poof.
You know, this is the only government that has passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act. You remember, Honorable Higgins? Mm-hmm. So clearly, this is a government that is determined to be accountable to the people.
But there is a question about previous accountability.
Yes, but
so how can we be sure about this?
I would want to see members of Parliament take on the responsible ministers in Parliament, ask specific questions of them urgently.
This has been done.
Okay.
They said they won't give us the information.
That is not possible.
Oh, really? That's what I'm telling you.
Me, if I were a member of Parliament, and you ask a question of a minister, and the minister says, I will not give you.
You didn't say I will not give you, but if in some instances it's shrouded in it's a national security matter.
Like which one? Let's be specific.
The president's travels, for instance, which has been a major source of criticism.
That's the reckless spending we're talking about.
That has been, and three ministers have come.
You think the president's travel is not a matter of national security? Your commander-in-chief?
I think the way the president travels, particularly in a time of economic challenges, is a matter of concern.
Parliament has procedures.
Yes, they followed it, Honorable
Parliament also appropriates the budget of all the security agencies, but you don't come to the floor to open up on all of that. There are sittings, closed sittings of Parliament, in-camera sittings of specific committees. Even sometimes parliamentary leadership will invite specific ministers and tell them that, listen, as for this one, we want to know. We agree with you, there's a national security element in there, but there is so much public interest in the matter that we want to know in a bipartisan manner, so that when we leave, we can assure the public that we have seen what there is to see to this matter, and probably it is not as is being speculated. But there is so much pollution lately. If I were in Parliament, what I would have done would have been to cause for the travels of all the previous presidents.
Why should we do that?
Because I know for a fact that every single president that we've had in this Fourth Republic ever traveled by the same means that the current president is traveling.
Through private jets?
Not at the same extravagant costs.
Through private luxury jets? Through private
the cost may not have come to light. I think but that is why I'm saying that
the criticism is you be transparent.
Yes.
But
we will be transparent where we can. But the president's travels is not national security anymore. It was during Rawlings and Atta Mills and Mahama's time, but when it is Nana Akufo-Addo, then it is no longer.
The concern is that the country has provided, and I don't want this to be about the presidential jet, because that seems to be something that always
since
comes
he is in
up.
Parliament to file.
So Honorable Ojeto Ablakwa has done that.
To ask for all the cost of travels of all the presidents.
I know the majority said they were going to do that.
So I want him to do it.
No, so we are waiting. But anyway,
it's a division of labor.
Okay, but
I'll be interested to see what you come up with.
But Honorable Ricketts Hagan, and this is the final bit of this. Now that the E-Levy has been passed, yes, the NDC minority is in court over it. You still remain opposed to it. The monies are going to be collected.
Yes.
What will be your role in helping address the concerns that there are many who have about how the monies will be expended? The finance minister has told us that it will form the bulk of amounts for YouStart to provide employment for young people.
The 10 billion.
Yes, among other things.
Well, first
the way you laugh, you don't seem convinced.
First and foremost, and I am talking from an economic standpoint, that the E-Levy, all the things that they have, all the proposals they have come up with, the E-Levy cannot do a quarter of it. So they are going to get this money. The money will be inadequate, to the problems that they have, and in the end, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
E-Levy is not the only source of revenue for the government.
Yeah, so why have they made it as if they would rather replace even... Look,
nobody has said that. All the noise about E-Levy was occasioned by the opposition NDC, not the MPP. We simply brought a tax proposal to Parliament.
And we opposed it.
You opposed it based, in my view now, of nothing.
We didn't. And
there is no basis for your opposition.
Well, we have given the basis.
And I have indicated to you the remedial measures, the remedies available to you to correct those things.
Well,
and you didn't take it, although you are using that as the basis to oppose it. There were remedial paths you could have taken.
Look, all the things that you are talking about.
Yes. For instance, if the finance minister has come to say that the proceeds of E-Levy would be used to do a particular thing, then you, being a member of parliament, wanting to see that he does just that, force it into the law.
Well, those things will happen.
But you ran away.
What I'm saying to you right now,
when it mattered most for Ghanaians, you ran away.
We opposed the E-Levy.
Yes.
Therefore, any discussion of what the E-Levy was going to do was not
your priority.
Was not our priority. Our priority was to stop the E-Levy.
But the reason you were opposing it, according to you, is because you didn't trust what government was.
It's going to kick in May.
Well, we are still in court. Let's see what happens. But let's hope that it's going to kick in.
As for this court, I can tell you what will happen.
If it is going to kick in, the finance minister had made some, proposal as to what they are going to put in place to make sure that the money is used to the things that he said he was going to use them for. But it doesn't make sense to me. That is why I can't even say that. But I will say that, well, if they are going to get the money and they are going to use it for the things, then we should have a checklist that we could be taken to what has been spent on what and what, to be able to give account of what that E-Levy is going to do. But the things he's talking about, he's collected 4 billion to set up an entrepreneurship or a youth program of 10 billion. With other resources.
But your 4 billion is 1 year.
The money will not go in at once.
But your 4 billion is 1 year's revenue, as you are saying.
They are talking about as if the whole 100 billion revenue is actually the E-Levy, which is not. The money they are talking about and the E-Levy that they are following. Look, I don't want to.
But is the program? I don't want to be. The 10 billion program, is it just a 1 year program?
But listen to this. I don't want to be the one who said I told you so. But I tell you that we want this country to work. We want things to go well for this country. But the current finance minister, the president, and the government of the MPP do not understand the economic challenges that we are having at the moment.
That's not fair.
That is not fair.
Was it 2 weeks ago that the finance minister came and laid it all bare, and then also gave his economic solutions, difficult economic solutions.
The solutions that they are offering will not address the problem. I came here last week and said, instead of throwing the kitchen sink at the problem, they are throwing the pans.
But we saw your own proposed solutions
that tells me that the person who is proposing the solution doesn't actually grasp the enormity
that's not
of
fair.
the problem.
Because that's not fair. Because I think so. There's one thing about so you can disagree that maybe you don't think the solutions will do that, but to say they don't understand or grasp it, that because the president himself referenced
they all alluded to the problems.
Let me probably maybe I was a bit harsh on that.
Okay.
Let me probably withdraw that.
Okay.
But the point I'm trying to make,
and apologize to me.
And I apologize to you, the finance minister, whoever. We want Ghana to work like the Black Stars have won.
And the E-Levy has finally been passed.
When I look at things, I get worried.
Add that one for me.
I am extremely worried. And that is why I wasn't even sometimes paying too much attention to the E-Levy.
You are worried about the other things.
I'm worried about the other things.
Okay. So that's your final point, your quick point, and then we have to end this segment.
They all do see things from the perspective you do. And I have read both their statements. The finance minister has indicated the causes of the problems you are raising. And he has also specified what government is going to do to correct these imbalances and the problems that we have. The important thing for me is the fact that pre-COVID, we were certainly on the path to getting to where we want to get to. From about 3.7 growth rate when we inherited the economy, we were steadily growing at a rate of an average of 7%, 2017, 2018, 2019, before COVID.
And that was all, as we were saying in the past, were all financial engineering.
There's no financial engineering here.
So your final point, so that we can wrap up. We have to deal with the State of the Nation address.
We know the government that paid 50, was it 53 or 51 for financial engineering by Oyomi?
Oh,
we know which government.
But you have not collected the money in office either. So let's not
know
go there.
which government.
So anyway, let's take a quick break. We're still here on the key points on TV3 and 3FM. We'll be right back after this break, and then we'll delve into the State of the Nation address. We'll just take a look at 3 major items. Of course, still the economic challenges which the president alluded to and acknowledged. Then his acceptance that the Agenda 111 projects are too ambitious and that timeline has been revised. And then finally, of course, the controversy on how many kilometers of roads have been built. We'll be right back.